Ken Carman just went nuclear on live radio. And I'm not talking about a little disagreement. I'm talking about calling out Jason Lloyd by name on air, saying he'll tell him to his face, pull him on the phone, and repeat it again. This isn't subtle. This isn't behind-the-scenes whispers. This is public. This is direct. And based on what we're hearing from Cleveland media right now, this might be the most uncomfortable moment in that market since everything fell apart with the coaching staff. Because here's what's happening. Ever since Kevin Stefanski got fired, it's like a dam broke. People who were quiet, they're talking now. People who were defending certain narratives, they're switching up. And the one name that keeps coming up in all of this, the one player who seems to be at the center of every conversation, every debate, every accusation of bias or unfair treatment, is Shedeur Sanders. And Ken Carman just made it clear he thinks Jason Lloyd wanted Shedeur cut, not because of football, but because of the backlash, because of the fans, because of how hard it became to cover him. Let that sit for a second. Now we've been watching this situation unfold for weeks. From the draft to the depth chart to the way reps were distributed to the way certain media members talked about Shedeur versus how they talked about other quarterbacks on that roster. And for the longest time, it felt like there was this unspoken agreement in Cleveland media. Don't question the coaching staff, don't question the process, just trust it. But now it feels like people are finally saying what they really thought all along, and Ken Carman didn't hold back. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here based on what we heard, that Jason Lloyd wanted Shedeur Sanders cut from the team. Not benched, not developed, cut. And Carman asked the question that I think a lot of people have been wondering, why? Why would you want a rookie quarterback who was drafted to be part of the future cut from the team after his first season? And Carman didn't just ask it once. He pressed on it. He said, do you want him cut because you're tired of seeing people say nasty things to you on the internet? Do you want him cut because it's hard to cover him? Do you want him cut because when you say you don't think he's a good quarterback, he's got a big fan base and they go after you for it? That's not a casual question, that's an accusation. That's saying, your opinion isn't about football, it's about how uncomfortable this situation has made you. And then Carman said something even stronger. He said that wanting a guy cut from a team is a very strong thing to say. That if you want someone cut, it should be because they're a detriment to the actual team, not because the media coverage is messy, not because fans are attacking you online, not because it's hard to do your job. He said he loves Jason Lloyd, but he firmly disagrees, and he'll say it to his face. Now let's back up. Let's talk about how we even got here, because this isn't just about one radio segment. This is about months of buildup, months of tension, months of people watching the way Shedeur Sanders was talked about in Cleveland and feeling like something wasn't right. When Shedeur was drafted, there was excitement, but there was also hesitation. Some people in the media were cautious. They said things like, he's got talent, but is he ready? They compared him to other quarterbacks in the class. They questioned his decision-making. They questioned his arm strength. They questioned whether he could handle an NFL offense. And look, questioning a rookie is normal, but the way it was done with Shedeur felt different. It felt like there was an extra layer of scrutiny, an extra layer of doubt. And when you compare that to how other quarterbacks on the roster were talked about, it starts to feel uneven. Dillon Gabriel, for example, there were people in Cleveland media who were hyping him up, saying he looked better in practice, saying he threw a tighter spiral, saying he was putting the ball in windows that Shedeur couldn't. Tony Grossi was one of those people, and for a long time that was the narrative. Dillon Gabriel might be the guy, Shedeur might not be ready. But then something changed. Stefanski got fired. And suddenly the narrative shifted. Tony Grossi, the same guy who was hyping up Dillon Gabriel, started admitting that maybe, just maybe, Shedeur was being sabotaged, that maybe the way things were handled wasn't fair, that maybe Shedeur didn't get the opportunity he deserved. And Ken Carman noticed. He pointed it out. He said it felt like people were protecting Stefanski, like the media was siding with the coaching staff, and anyone who questioned how Shedeur was being developed was shut down. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable, because if you go back and look at the timeline, there are moments that raise questions, moments where it looks like Shedeur wasn't being set up for success. From what we've seen, Shedeur didn't get consistent first-team reps. He was behind Deshaun Watson on the depth chart, which makes sense from a veteran standpoint. But even when Watson struggled, even when it was clear the offense wasn't working, Shedeur wasn't getting the opportunity to step in and show what he could do. Instead, it looked like the coaching staff was rotating between veterans, trying to find something that worked, while Shedeur sat and watched. And when he did play, based on the footage we've seen, he was often coming in cold. No rhythm, no timing with the first-team offense, playing from behind. And still, he managed to win the last 2 games of the season, against division opponents, against the Steelers and the Bengals, 2 teams that know how to play defense. So the question becomes, if Shedeur could win games at the end of the season with no first-team reps, with no consistent development, with the weight of all this media criticism on him, what could he have done if he was actually given a real chance from the start? That's the question Ken Carman is asking, and based on what he said, it sounds like he thinks Shedeur is the best option on that roster, not Deshaun Watson, not Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. And he didn't just say it once, he emphasized it. He said, as of right now, he's the best option that they have. He said, he's shown me enough. He said if the new head coach comes in and wants to move on from Shedeur, fine, but there better be a plan. There better be a reason that's about football, not about media noise. But here's the thing, Ken Carman also made it clear that he's not part of the Shedeur cult. He's not blindly defending him. He's not saying Shedeur is perfect. He's saying Browns first. He's saying he wants what's best for the team. And right now, based on what they have, Shedeur is the best option. And that's where the Jason Lloyd stuff comes back in, because if Carman is right, if Lloyd really did want Shedeur cut, then the question becomes, why? What did Jason Lloyd see that made him think the best move was to get rid of a rookie quarterback who just won 2 division games? And Carman's theory, based on what he said, is that it's not about football. It's about the difficulty of covering Shedeur. It's about the backlash. It's about the fan base that defends him aggressively. It's about the fact that when you criticize Shedeur, people come at you online, and that makes your job harder. But Carman's point is, that's not a reason to want someone cut. That's not a football reason, that's a media reason. And football decisions shouldn't be based on how hard it is for the media to do their jobs. Now let's talk about the media environment in Cleveland, because it's intense, it's passionate, it's opinionated, and when it comes to the quarterback position, it's borderline obsessive. Browns fans have been waiting for a franchise quarterback for decades. They've seen bust after bust. They've seen hope turn into disappointment over and over again. So when Shedeur Sanders was drafted, there was a mix of excitement and skepticism. Some fans were all in, some fans were cautious, and the media reflected that divide. But what's interesting is how the conversation shifted once Stefanski was gone, because during the season it felt like the media was mostly aligned. They were defending the coaching staff's decisions. They were saying Shedeur wasn't ready. They were saying the process needed time. But now it feels like people are admitting things they weren't willing to say before. Tony Grossi is admitting Shedeur might have been sabotaged. Ken Carman is calling out Jason Lloyd for wanting him cut. And other media members are starting to ask uncomfortable questions about how the entire situation was handled. And that raises a bigger question. Were people afraid to criticize Stefanski while he was still the coach? Was there pressure, either subtle or direct, to support the coaching staff's decisions? And if so, does that mean the media wasn't giving fans the full picture? Because if you go back and look at some of the things that were said during the season, there's a pattern. Anytime someone questioned why Shedeur wasn't playing, there was pushback. Anytime someone suggested he should get more reps, they were told to trust the process. Anytime someone pointed out that the offense looked stagnant and maybe a change was needed, they were dismissed as overreacting. But now, with Stefanski gone, it's like all of that pushback has disappeared, and people are saying the quiet part out loud. Ken Carman said something that stuck with me. He said he's heard from people who think Shedeur deserves better, that he needs a more uplifting media, that the coverage of him has been too negative, too critical, too harsh for a rookie quarterback. And Carman disagreed. He said he doesn't think Shedeur needs that. He doesn't think rookies need to be coddled or protected from criticism. He thinks they need honest evaluation. But here's the nuance. There's a difference between honest evaluation and unfair treatment. There's a difference between pointing out flaws and creating a narrative that a player isn't good enough before they've even had a real chance to prove themselves. And based on what we've seen, it feels like Shedeur was fighting against a narrative before he ever took a meaningful snap. A narrative that he wasn't ready, that he couldn't handle the NFL, that other quarterbacks on the roster were better options. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, with the last 2 games of the season as evidence, with Ken Carman openly saying Shedeur is the best option on the roster, it's hard not to wonder if that narrative was wrong from the start. Let's talk about those last 2 games, because they matter. Shedeur came in with no first-team reps, with no consistent development, with all the noise and criticism surrounding him, and he won. Against division opponents, against teams that were competing for playoff spots, against defenses that knew how to make life difficult for rookie quarterbacks. And he didn't just win, he played composed. He made throws, he managed the game, he looked like someone who belonged on an NFL field. Now, does that mean he's a finished product? Does that mean he's a guaranteed franchise quarterback? No, but does it mean he deserved a better opportunity earlier in the season? Based on what we saw, it's hard to argue otherwise. And that's what Ken Carman is saying. He's not saying Shedeur is perfect. He's not saying the Browns should hand him the keys and never look at another quarterback again. He's saying, right now, based on what we have, he's the best option, and if you want to move on from him, you better have a damn good reason. And that's where the Jason Lloyd situation becomes so uncomfortable. Because if Lloyd really did want Shedeur cut, and if Carman's assessment of why is accurate, then it means Lloyd was advocating for a football decision based on non-football reasons, and that's a problem. Now, let's be clear, we don't have Jason Lloyd's side of this yet. We're hearing Ken Carman's interpretation. We're hearing what Carman said on air, but Lloyd hasn't responded, at least not publicly. So we're working with one side of the story. But even if we take Carman's account at face value, it raises serious questions. Because if media members are letting the difficulty of their jobs influence how they evaluate players, then that's a credibility issue. If media members are advocating for roster decisions based on how hard it is to deal with a player's fan base, then that's crossing a line. And Carman seems to think that's exactly what happened. He said it multiple times, he emphasized it, he said he'll say it to Lloyd's face, he's not backing down. And that tells you how serious this is, because Ken Carman isn't some random podcaster or social media personality. He's an established radio host in Cleveland. He's got a platform, he's got a reputation, and he's putting that on the line by calling out Jason Lloyd directly. Now, let's talk about the bigger picture, because this isn't just about one media spat. This isn't just about Ken Carman versus Jason Lloyd. This is about how rookie quarterbacks are developed, how media narratives shape public perception, and how organizations make decisions under pressure. Shedeur Sanders came into a difficult situation. He was drafted into a franchise that's desperate for a quarterback. He's got a famous last name which brings both attention and scrutiny. He's got a passionate fan base, which means every decision involving him is magnified. And he walked into a locker room where there were veteran quarterbacks already on the roster, including a guy who was given a massive contract and was supposed to be the answer. That's a lot to navigate, and from what we've seen, it doesn't look like the organization gave him the cleanest path to success. Now, that's not necessarily sabotage. It's not necessarily a conspiracy, but it does raise questions about priorities. It raises questions about whether the coaching staff was committed to developing Shedeur or if they were more focused on trying to make things work with the veterans they already had. And Ken Carman seems to think it was the latter. He seems to think the organization was protecting Stefanski and Stefanski was protecting his own decisions and Shedeur was caught in the middle. And if that's true, then the media's role in all of this becomes really important. Because if the media was defending those decisions, if they were amplifying the narrative that Shedeur wasn't ready, if they were shutting down questions about why he wasn't playing, then they were part of the problem. And now, with Stefanski gone, it feels like some of those same media members are realizing that. They're realizing that maybe they were too quick to defend the coaching staff. Maybe they were too slow to ask uncomfortable questions. Maybe they gave Stefanski the benefit of the doubt for too long. And that's why this Ken Carman moment matters, because he's not just calling out Jason Lloyd, he's calling out the entire media ecosystem in Cleveland. He's saying, we lost our minds, we've been nuts about this situation. He's saying the coverage of Shedeur Sanders has been insane. And he's right. From what we've seen, the way Shedeur has been covered, the way every throw has been analyzed, the way every mistake has been magnified, the way his fan base has been criticized, it's been intense, it's been relentless, and it's been uneven compared to how other quarterbacks have been covered. Dillon Gabriel, for example, he got praised for practice reps. He got hyped up as a potential starter, but when it came time to actually play, he didn't get the same opportunities Shedeur eventually got. And when Shedeur played, he won. So why was Gabriel getting so much love in the media? Why were people like Tony Grossi saying he looked better? Why was there this push to make it seem like Shedeur wasn't the answer? And the uncomfortable answer, based on what we're hearing now, is that it might have been about protecting Stefanski. It might have been about not wanting to admit that the coaching staff made a mistake by not giving Shedeur a chance earlier. It might have been about not wanting to rock the boat. But now the boat's rocked, Stefanski's gone, and everyone's scrambling to adjust their narratives. Ken Carman said something else that's worth noting. He said he's part of neither cult. He's not part of the Shedeur fan base that defends him no matter what. And he's not part of the anti-Shedeur crowd that wants him gone. He's just trying to evaluate the situation fairly. And his conclusion is, Shedeur is the best option, not because he's perfect, not because he's guaranteed to be a franchise quarterback, but because, based on what the Browns have right now, he's shown enough to deserve the opportunity to be the starter. And if the new coaching staff disagrees, if they want to bring in someone else, if they want to draft another quarterback or trade for a veteran, then fine. But there better be a clear plan. There better be a reason that makes sense. Because right now, it looks like Shedeur got a raw deal. It looks like he didn't get a fair chance. It looks like the media was harder on him than they should have been. And it looks like some of that was about protecting the previous coaching staff rather than honestly evaluating the quarterback situation. Now here's where it gets even more complicated, because Ken Carman also mentioned other quarterbacks. He mentioned Mac Jones, he mentioned Malik Willis. He said if people want to have conversations about those guys, he's open to it. He's not locked into Shedeur, he's just saying, right now, based on what we have, he's the best option. And that's the balanced take, that's the fair take. It's not blindly defending Shedeur, it's not ignoring his flaws, it's saying, let's be honest about what we have and make decisions based on that. But the Jason Lloyd stuff throws a wrench into that, because if Lloyd really was advocating for Shedeur to be cut, then that's not balanced, that's not fair, that's extreme, and Carman called it out as such. He said wanting a guy cut from a team is a very strong thing to say. And it should only be based on football, not on media coverage, not on internet backlash, not on how hard it is to do your job. And if Lloyd's position was influenced by non-football factors, then that's a problem, because media members have influence. What they say shapes public opinion. What they say can influence organizational decisions. And if they're letting personal frustrations or job difficulties cloud their judgment, then they're not doing their jobs properly. Now we need to be careful here. We don't want to accuse Jason Lloyd of something he didn't do or didn't mean. We're working with what Ken Carman said. We're working with his interpretation. But even if Carman misunderstood Lloyd's position, even if there's more context we're not aware of, the fact that Carman felt the need to call it out publicly tells you something. It tells you that there's real tension in Cleveland media right now. It tells you that people are frustrated with how this situation has been covered. It tells you that there's a feeling that Shedeur Sanders didn't get a fair shake, and some of that is on the media. And Ken Carman is standing up and saying it, out loud on the air, putting his name on it. That takes guts, because it's not easy to call out a colleague publicly. It's not easy to say, I disagree with you and I'll say it to your face. It's not easy to risk your professional relationships by making a stand like that. But Carman did it, and based on the reaction we're seeing, a lot of people agree with him. A lot of fans are saying, finally, someone in the media is being honest about this. A lot of people are saying, thank you for standing up for Shedeur. And that tells you something too. It tells you that there's been a disconnect between how some media members have covered Shedeur and how fans perceive his situation. Fans see a rookie quarterback who was thrown into a tough situation, who didn't get consistent opportunities, who dealt with constant criticism, and who still managed to win games when it mattered. And they're frustrated that the media narrative hasn't reflected that. They're frustrated that it feels like Shedeur has been held to a different standard. They're frustrated that other quarterbacks get the benefit of the doubt while Shedeur gets scrutinized. And Ken Carman is validating that frustration. He's saying, you're not crazy, the coverage has been insane, we've lost our minds about this situation. And that's powerful, because it's coming from inside the media ecosystem. It's not just fans complaining on social media, it's an established media member admitting that the coverage hasn't been fair. Now the question is, what happens next? Because this isn't going away. The Browns are hearing a new head coach. They're going to have to make decisions about the quarterback position. And all of this media attention, all of this narrative baggage is going to be part of that conversation. If the new coaching staff comes in and decides Shedeur is the guy, then Carmen's position will look validated. If they come in and decide to move on from Shedeur, then the debate will continue. And if they come in and give Shedeur a real opportunity, consistent first-team reps, a fair chance to compete and prove himself, then we'll finally get to see what he can really do. And that's what this is all about. Not about media fights, not about who was right or wrong during the season. It's about giving a young quarterback a fair opportunity to show what he can do. And based on what we've seen, based on those last 2 games, based on how he handled himself in a difficult situation, Shedeur Sanders deserves that opportunity. Ken Carmen thinks so, and he's willing to put his reputation on the line to say it. He's willing to call out Jason Lloyd. He's willing to challenge the media narrative. He's willing to say, we screwed this up. And that's the kind of honesty that's been missing from this conversation. Because for too long, it felt like people were dancing around the real issues. They were defending coaching decisions without asking hard questions. They were criticizing Shedeur without acknowledging the context. They were amplifying narratives without examining whether those narratives were fair. But now, with Stefanski gone, the truth is starting to come out. And it's uncomfortable, it's messy, it's exposing things that some people probably wish stayed hidden. But it's necessary, because the Browns need to move forward with clarity. They need to know what they have in Shedeur Sanders. They need to give him a real chance or move on decisively. They can't keep him in this limbo where he's not really the starter but not really the backup, where he gets just enough playing time to be evaluated but not enough to actually develop. And the media needs to do better. They need to cover him fairly. They need to ask tough questions without bias. They need to hold the coaching staff accountable without protecting them. They need to give fans honest analysis, not narrative-driven coverage. Ken Carmen is trying to do that, and whether you agree with him or not, whether you think Shedeur Sanders is the answer or not, you have to respect the fact that he's being honest. He's being direct. He's being willing to have uncomfortable conversations. And right now, that's exactly what Cleveland needs, because this situation is uncomfortable. It raises questions that don't have easy answers. It exposes tensions that have been building for months. It forces people to examine their own biases and assumptions. And at the center of it all is a rookie quarterback who's trying to prove himself in one of the toughest markets in football. A quarterback who's dealt with more noise, more criticism, more scrutiny than most rookies ever have to face. A quarterback who's still standing, still fighting, still showing up and competing. And maybe, just maybe, he deserves better than he's gotten. Maybe Ken Carmen is right. Maybe Shedeur Sanders is the best option the Browns have right now. Maybe all of this drama, all of this media tension, all of this uncomfortable truth-telling, maybe it's necessary to finally give him a fair shot. But we'll see. The new coaching staff will make their decisions. The media will continue to debate. The fans will continue to be passionate. And Shedeur Sanders will keep working, keep preparing, keep trying to prove that he belongs. And that's where we are, that's the situation. Ken Carmen went nuclear on Jason Lloyd. The media is fractured, the narratives are shifting, and nobody knows for sure what happens next. But one thing's clear, this conversation is far from over. The truth is still coming out. And the way Cleveland handles this situation will tell us a lot about the franchise, about the media, and about how we evaluate young quarterbacks in this league. So what do you think? Is Ken Carmen right to call out Jason Lloyd like this? Is Shedeur Sanders being treated fairly? Did the media protect Stefanski at Shedeur's expense? Let me know in the comments, because this is the kind of situation that doesn't have easy answers. And the only way we figure it out is by having honest conversations, just like Ken Carmen is trying to do.